Hey, and welcome guys to another little tutorial. Now this one will be a little off my usual subject because usually I work with Unity and making games and things like that, but I also have a section for learning. So in this video I think it would be good to touch on what classes are and so touch on variables and things, and what's some of the stuff that you usually see in the scripting language and how to use them a little bit more in depth, okay? Because not everybody just knows, so we've got to address that in some form of a way. So I thought it would be a good time to introduce classes like so, and what some of it all means. Now, on your screen, you're seeing just a regular dummy script, nothing special, and it's a mono behavior. This is just basically a script that if you just hit create C# script in Unity, this is what you would get. Now, for the most part, you'll open it up, it'll look like this. But do you actually know what this means? This is an inheriting branch. So this is inheriting something, okay? And what mono behaviors is basically type, it's like an interface into the game engine that you're using. And we have this little using Unity. This is a namespace, which is basically importing a library. Now if we delete this, you notice the mono behavior, it is not liking it because it requires the namespace to be used, or we can go over here and we can have it go Unity engine.mono behavior here. And this is basically the same thing, just not as well cleanly looking. So we're going to go and put it back, and that's basically what our namespaces do, is we import something from other types of libraries. Now to more specify it, we'll have to get into some more advanced topics with assemblies and what classes do for us and what statics and what normal variables do, but we're not going to go too far into it. Now, because we have mono behavior here, this start and this update, you'll get this, and these are privately sealed inside this class. So if we wanted to go into a different class, like here's another dummy class, this is the second one, and we want to access something within dummy, the first group. Well, in our start method, it would probably be a get component, right? Because we're getting a component and we want to get test1, okay? And we will grab it like this, and then we can go dot. Well, these dot are calls to functions that are publicly available to us. And now you probably can't see the window, so let me adjust my recording thing to something better. Let's do a monitor. Okay, so now you could probably see this window and see the scroll bar right here. It will give us many other things that we can have access to it. But if you notice, we can't go into start. We do a start coroutine, but there's no coroutine there. So what the heck, I mean, it'll blindly do a coroutine that's inside there. Doesn't make sense. So we're going to have to modify something. So in our test one, let's put a public here. Now, if we go into the script that we wanted to get access to, we'll go dot start, and we have the start function. Okay, so we have access to something that's in an entire different class by making it public on the function side right here. So that's what it means to make that public there. And what this is right here is a constructor. So this is a class, okay, and inside the class are constructors. That's what it is, a constructor. Now, some of these only run one time, and then others run in an update loop. Update is called every frame. Okay, so it ticks. It'll go bam, 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 bam. Where start only runs one time. Okay, so we get that out of the way. So what benefits can we do by this? And in the best case, did we actually learn anything from that explanation? Maybe, yes, no. Are you lost? Well, okay. So we're going to go into Unity. All right. We have this object here. It's plain, it looks weird, and it's totally useless, right? Well, in a coding standpoint, this is a game object. You're used to doing this all the time. Okay, so it's a game object. Well, what do game objects have? They have an inspector panel. Now, if you think about this, transform, mesh filters, these all look like something that's part of this object. Okay, so you got a game object, and then we have components here. Well, what if you take the concept of the game object? Well, then it's got components like scripts that you attach and stuff, and you're like, where am I going with this? Well, if you go back into your script, okay, this script right here, it's a class, right? Well, what if you said these were the components of it? They're functions that's owned by this class. So basically, we've got a game object, and then in order to get components off that game object, we got to call for it, which is the same concept that you're doing here. Instead of a component, you know, you take the theory of, hey, we want to get a game object, so you would go, you know, game object dot find. I need the uppercase 1. Game object go equals game object dot find, or find with tag. That would work. And you know, this, okay, and this would return a game object that you could go with. Well, in scripts you have functions, so it's pretty easy to see the relationship now. I bet you can follow this. So that's kind of like the relationship between it. Functions are something that's owned by that object, okay? That class owns those functions, or that game object owns those components. Very easy relationship to see, and I hope you see where I'm going with it. So, okay, you know, and then publicly available stuff you can access with other scripts. Well, if you ever see these things where they're in here and then you have these variables, well, variables up here or outside of functions, so basically they're outside of these. Most of the time they're up at the top, but sometimes I put it right above the function. These are permanent variables. They are owned by the class. So let's go vector 3 GG. We don't need a value up here, so we're fine. These are permanent variables that's within the class. They will always be in the class. Okay. Now you're like, well, I've seen these variables up here, inside of these little brackets here. What's these for? Well, matter of fact, you can do a vector 3 go, okay, and you could put more variables in here and stuff and so on and so forth. These are used to pass information into the function, okay. So when we go into our start here, and when you put anything inside your function, like here, it's owned by that function. And what I mean by that is if you go down here into the function and you say, let's say vector 3 goal equals, let's say go, the variable go that we have here, okay? Well, we are assigning a variable that's right here, a value, yes. And when it's in here, it is temporarily in memory. So basically, this will no longer exist once start runs. It will run this one time in the life of the program, or whenever the script deserializes and serializes, which from level to level, or like, how can I put this? Okay, let's say you instantiate this in one level, but then you go into another level. Well, this will run again per level in Unity, and that's the way it goes. Okay, but this will only run and exist on the start loop. This goal right here will not exist in this contents. Okay, it will not exist after it starts. It'll start, create the variable, and then it will go get garbage collected. Wherever you pass the information could be in another constructor, another function that calls, where you could pass it into here. This would make it the value permanent. But this variable right here is a temporary. Just like this. This is temporarily because you're just passing a reference. Okay? And I hope that's very easy to get. Okay? So what is the next thing that we could use? Now in my previous video, I done return types. Now in our thing, we can use a vector 3 get vec and make it into a return type. Okay, now this is very important as well, because in a return type you have to return a value. It's expecting a vector 3 here. So what I like to do is, if you don't have one in the constructor, just make a temp. Okay, now in our garbage collector, it's not happy because it's never used. Even if I do this, return temp, I don't think that it likes it, okay? Because it says unassigned used variable. It does not like that it's never used whatsoever, okay? Which is kind of silly, because all you have to do to get rid of it is put over here vector3.0 or up, down, and the compiler doesn't care anymore. Sometimes some variables that you create need values, and other times they do not. You just have to pay attention to your compiler and your warnings. Up here in permanent warnings, I don't think they care. But down here, when you make a temporary variable, even though it defaults to 0, 0, 0, the compiler doesn't like that it doesn't have a value right off the bat. Even though you know it's going to be 0. So it's just the way it is. In other languages, some do not require this step, but in C#, they do. So in order to call this, all we do for this type of scenario is we go and we're like, well, we're going to call this, and this is a function, but it's only a return type. Well, that's fine, because we're returning a vector3, and this is a vector3. So we do get vec, like a function. Bam. Now we will return vector3.0. So what could this do for us? Well, this could be an enemy, we could have this reference somewhere for the player, and this could tell where the enemy is every single frame. So we just do get vec and it returns the location. That sounds fine. We don't have to use a vector3. We can use a lot of other things. You can use a transform, transform go, and then just do your operations, but you have to return because it's expecting a return type. Okay? You don't have to use a vector3. I'm just using that as an example. You can actually have it return a class if you want, which, let's go into this and let's bubble this up a little. Okay? And what I mean, well, let's just do this. Let's just go and put this as test1 get class and have it as a constructor. Okay. The only thing about it is it's wanting us to return a class of this. So naturally, we're going to have to make a temporary variable in order to return it, which is the same thing as test1 t, which we can put temp as well, equals new 1, which we're instantiating a new copy and basically putting in a pointer. Okay? And we do a return temp. Okay, not that bad, right? We don't have to instantiate a new one. We can have it return this class right here because it's test1. Doesn't matter. It's expecting a variable type of. Or, instead of doing this, we can delete this. We can just have it do return this. It doesn't matter. As long as the return type is is exactly what this is, it doesn't care. Because it'll just return this class. It doesn't even matter. So, what usefulness could we get from this? Well, in my weapon class that we're doing for our FPS, I have a public static variable, which is, we're going to do test 1, and then we'll label it go-to. Okay. Well, go-to needs to be instantiated somehow. It needs to be pointed, because when it first goes into the game, this is a permanent variable. Okay, that's fine. Well, the problem with it is, because it's global and it's accessible from other classes, it starts off null. So if it gets a null reference, it creates an error. So in the start function or awake, we always go, it's common for go-to equals this, okay? And that's fine, I guess, I mean, it works, but it kind of sucks, okay? And it does. I don't like this. So a lot of times, sometimes I will go and we will just remember this function. It returns our class, the class that we're in, and it returns. So it's expecting this type. So get class, right? Does the same exact operation, okay? The very same operation, doesn't even matter, who cares, okay? It's the same thing as this, because we're just getting that variable. We're getting this script. It's just another way of doing it. Yes, it's a function that returns this and stuff, but, it's super fast. It does the job. And it gives us the ability, because what if we want the awesome part of doing this? Well, now we have one that requires a vector 2. Wait, it just got more complicated. Or let's say a vector 3. GG. Okay? Well, we have a problem because it's expecting a vector 3 now. And I've got duplicates. Basically, I've got a duplicate. Okay? Well, it's not really a duplicate in C#. It's actually two different functions. Because this overload method is different, the compiler is smart enough to be able to filter out which one it actually is. So it will give us a variant now. Get class. And we'll have constructors 1 and 2. One requires nothing, one requires a vector. So there's variances there, okay? And it'll run just fine. Now, there is a different way of doing something. And what we're going to look at now is what is it to be a global variable in a class? Well, a global variable is static, okay? It means only one. I cannot have a variable of any type in the game, and any type in the program that has goTo. If I try to instantiate another anywhere else, it will give me a problem. Okay? It doesn't like it, it will not like it. Now I can have a different instance, a public static of something else, but it's kind of pointless to do. So what do we do? Can we have statics for something? Yeah, we can have statics for a whole lot of stuff. So let's do a return type that's static, okay? Static test1 get class. Now we have a problem with this. It doesn't like it. This is not a valid thing to do. And the reason why this isn't valid is because it's looking for static variables. And this class is not static, okay? So it's not instantiated and permanently into our program. It's not set up to exist all the time. So what can we do about that? We can actually make the class static, yes. And that will, it should actually, it doesn't? Really? Oh, it's because it's not. Actually, we can put goTo here and it will be fine. Because it is a static. So we can get rid of this static class. Okay? We'll go over that some other time. So why would this be a good thing to do sometimes? Well, sometimes you need access to certain variables, but you don't want to screw with getting the component. Maybe you have one component. Well, because this function right here is static, like this, it's not accessible by any class but this class. So let's fix that and make it public, okay? So this can only exist once, which is fine. So let's go into our other class here. Well, we need this can be a test1 variable, okay? Go, and right off the bat we're going to equal up to null, okay? But in our start method we want to do something. Well, what do we want to do? Well, we need to fill out the variable because it's null, right? Well, we can do it one of two ways, okay? Go equals test1 dot go to, which is a global variable, okay? That's valid. Or we can go and get class, okay? Get class where the vector3 is a global thing. It will always exist from here, okay? This will never be null, alright? No, it'll never be null because it's returning, it's expecting a type, that kind of thing. Because it's a return type. So it returns this, which it's expecting a vector3, so we just put vector3 dot 0. We don't do anything with that, and everything will be hunky-dory, okay? And this will work because it's just a return type. You're returning the class. It's fine. So it fills out the class now. And the great thing about this test 1 is it will always exist as long as we don't put namespaces to filter out stuff. Then this will always be accessible. Now you're like, what's namespaces? These are these imported like libraries. Namespaces, they can be used to filter out stuff so that one script can not access certain things. Like maybe you don't want your weapon customization scripts to be conflicting with your your NPC scripts, because one might have the name from the other, which is totally legit. So you would do a namespace. It's not hard. All you have to do is come up to here and go namespace. Yeah, it's namespace, and I believe you would go and put your name and your construction, isn't it? And that's how you can do that. So if we do this from test 1, okay, we go up here to namespaces, and we want to filter out certain things. Well, we'll put a name here, and this will go get me, whatever you want to name it. Now you get this problem. Well, it cannot be found because you're referencing an assembly or something. So you have to import a namespace in order to use this, okay? And this is kind of good and bad at the same time. It keeps people from, when you use namespaces, if you have two classes that are named the same thing, the namespaces can keep it from conflicting, okay? Where you can, it's basically like a filter-like function for classes so they can't conflict with each other. Let's say you're in the asset store and you have a weapon class in there. Well, if you import some first-person shooter thing and you buy it, they might have the same name for another script that says weapon on here. Well, it just broke your project. And you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to fix it. Well, namespaces can keep you from having problems. They take a little while to get used to and things, but they can be a filtering method that's really nice for you if you're, working with a lot of different types of things. Like the player shouldn't have, the player class shouldn't have access to maybe the camera script functionality, which is fine. Totally understandable. You shouldn't have scripts that one controls the camera, then one controls the player, and this and that. Now, that sounds like a big old hairy mess to get into, unless you want them to interact. So namespaces could help you with that. So for the most part, I think that should help you out in a little bit of understanding and all that good stuff. I hope I didn't confuse you too much with little functions. Maybe we'll get into some harder stuff for the beginner things. I just didn't want to cram too much information into your brains all at once, because I'll admit it, when I went for computer science and they started going through like how to code and HTML and PHP and all these other things. It was a flow of information of what in the heck did I get myself into? I paid $4,000 for 3 months or whatever to listen to this. This doesn't even look like English, right? So, yeah. Don't feel frustrated. Just, actually, matter of fact, you know what I'll tell you to do? Go into a script, break it, try to fix it. If you can't, just re-import something and just keep doing it until you can understand what you're doing. Sometimes the best way to learn is just to mess up stuff. Just break it. Because when it's broken, you know it because it's going to scream in the compiler. And, you know, hey, that's the way you got to learn. That's the way you got to learn. If you want to read, read. Because, like I like to say in a lot of my videos, some of my solutions may not work for you. And if you don't know how to read script or something like that, some of these micro mini functions that I make, you could misunderstand them and be like, well, this project just sucks because it just doesn't work. When it actually does, you just don't know how, or you misread something. And spelling is a big part sometimes. So, don't get frustrated, trust me. It's all good, and we all started somewhere. So, take care, guys, and, you know, let me know in the comment sections or something like that. And I'll try to get you guys another video of some type out there. But, be cool and take care. Peace.